Hey, I'm Hello Rodney. Thanks for clicking on my video. I just did a video on Labor Day, and then I went to this video and was looking at the comments. It said the labor movement has been crushed and ground into the dirt. And my response is, there's a difference between being crushed and ground into the dirt and committing suicide. Here's a guy. I'm not in America, so Labor Day doesn't mean much to me, but I got 2 weeks off, and I'm pretty happy about that. The labor movement did give people holidays and the 40-hour week. They did good. That was when companies were really putting the hammer on labor. But finally, labor understood that they have something worth value, and that's their labor. And so they started to form labor unions. There was a movie out called Salt of the Earth, which was about the labor movement where I grew up. It was about mining. Salt of the Earth, and I think it was done by people that had been blackballed, not blackballed, but not blackballed. That's the wrong word. Who had been put out of making movies because they were communists and that kind of thing back in the 50s. And there was a communist by the name of Jinx who helped organize the labor where I grew up. And I went to call him one day to thank him for what he did, and he had already died. But that was the day when people really needed labor help. Absolutely. My father was a steel worker. I was a steel worker. I've been in the steel workers, the carpenters, the office workers, the operating engineers, and the scenic and title artists unions. And my comment there's a difference between being crushed and ground into the dirt and committing suicide. The steelworkers, where I grew up, were the strongest union. I was in the steelworkers. But the unions, there were other unions. There were all kinds of different unions. But the steelworkers were the big union. And so I wasn't a member of the steelworkers at that time. I was a member of the office workers. And so it was a big contract that was coming up. And I went to the president of the steelworkers and asked him if I could sit in on the steelworkers meeting. And he said yes. And why wouldn't he? We played on the same Little League baseball team. So when I was growing up as a kid, I'm 63 years old. The Steelworkers Hall was packed. I mean, you couldn't even find a place to park. The parking spilled over completely. I mean, it was cars everywhere going to the Union Hall meeting. I get my fly swatter made in China. You think you're going to survive, fly? China makes great fly swatters, I have to tell you. I've had this one for a long time, and this has got a good... So the steelworkers were a very proud union. They came out of the salt of the earth, basically. That whole movement where people just went on strike to withhold labor so that they could get some sort of leverage against these mining companies. And it worked. It worked. And then my generation came along, and we were young, and so we just stepped right in and continued that process. I walked a picket line. I never would cross a picket line. And then one time it was a big, this strike, I think it was the same strike we're talking about now, with the, where I went to the union hall to ask my old little league baseball buddy if I could go to the meeting. He said, yeah. And so the people from the International, I think they were from Pittsburgh. I think the International Union of the Steelworkers in Pittsburgh, but I'm not sure. So the guys from the International were there. And they were just shaking their head, because they had never worried about our union. Because this was kind of a militant union. It came out of the 50s. And where you couldn't find a place to park at the union hall, now I bet you there wasn't 30 people in the freaking union hall meeting, and this is a big deal. It's going to be a strike. And the guys from the International were just shaking their head. I was talking to one of them, but he says, we never worried about 890. That was the end of the steel workers. I don't even think they're in business anymore. And they didn't get crushed. They just became fat and lazy. Our parents really built something strong there. So the strong parents end up, and I guess at that time, with a bunch of people that don't care, that think it's never going to change now that it's good. It's good now, so it's never going to change. Well, it changed. It changed a lot. But there's not going to be any response, because there's no reason to have a response, because labor doesn't have any impact anymore, really. Not on mining anyway. They produce copper all over the world now. America's heyday in labor was after World War II, when the rest of the world was complete. The industrial capacity of the rest of the world was completely wiped out. Germany, England, Japan, it was just wiped out. So you know what happened? Is that when it started to rebuild again, it rebuilt with modern equipment, modern factories, modern everything. And where I was working, from what I understand, the crusher was from like the freaking Panama Canal. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but it had been there for years and years and years. And by the time the company started to realize, hey, we got to modernize, instead of tearing the whole thing down and starting over, which is what they had to do in Germany and Japan, they just put something brand new on something that's really old. And by the time years passed and they figured out, well, that's not going to work, and they had to redo the whole thing, it was too late. It's too late for labor, that's for sure. It's sad that the labor movement has been crushed and ground into the dirt. Labor union committed suicide by not staying attentive, by not changing a little bit with the times. I remember a story, I didn't hear it, but I heard a story down there of some guy. I mean, we were some of the dumbest people in the world, let me tell you. We were beasts of burden. We work in a copper mine, and a smelter, and a mill. You have to be strong to do that. Strong back, weak mind is a good thing. So we were beasts of burden. You can't There was a guy who was, I heard it, I don't know if it's true or not. I'm pretty sure it's true. I'm sure it is. It says, we will bring them to their knees, talking about management. Labor, we're going to bring them to their knees. One time we went on strike for 9 months. The company said, we're not giving you anything for 9 months. I don't know exactly how that ended up, but my dad had to go away and get another job. We actually, one part of that, he went down to Arizona and got a bunch of culls, which are the cantaloupes that don't make it into the supermarket system. There's a little misshaped or whatever the thing is. They were doing that at that time too. And we got a whole truckload of culls and brought them back and sold them door to door, which is cool. Help pay for the family, keep everything going. But instead of trying to cooperate with management and trying to negotiate as best as we as beasts of burden could with management, we will bring you to your knees. What? No, that's how you get crushed. That's how you get crushed and ground into the dirt. Whenever you're telling somebody that's got the power that it will crush you, well, they'll crush you. Instead of negotiating and trying to get something that is reasonable. Like now the burger flippers want $15 an hour. That's unreasonable. You'll never get that. They'll never get that. And then this country is going to make citizens out of 11 million illegal immigrants. There's going to be and people saying things like, oh, the Democrats are the keepers of the flame of the movement, the labor movement. You're not keepers of the flame of the labor movement if you give 11 million beasts of burden citizenship. These people that are complaining about not getting $15 an hour, they're going to get their asses fired and they're going to get replaced by somebody that's probably going to get less than they're getting now because there's going to be 11 people looking for work. So instead of the unions trying to, using their head, but they don't use their head because they're beasts of burden, and I can't argue that. I mean, they didn't know any different. They didn't know any better. So now, what happens? We get crushed. We get crushed. Because we're going to crush you. We will make you come to your knees. Well, that shadow isn't this cloud going over the sun. It's a big giant boot landing right on top of you, like a fly swatter on top of a fly. Because the flies didn't have the intelligence to say, okay, look, we can coexist here. Now we've got this much money, we will continue to work for this, but we want a long-term contract. And we want things like, we want to continue having our health care benefits. We want to stabilize wages with a cost of living increase. And we want to set up a fund for college. We want to do some things that will help our people. But we're not going to be, but this is it. We want a 15-year contract, and we'll get to work and make this the greatest country in the world. And we want a bonus. If the company makes money, then give us a little piece of it because we're the ones doing the work. Did they do that? No. We will crush you. We will bring you to your knees. And what comes down on top of them? On top of us? That's what's going to happen to these burger flippers that want $15 an hour. I'm Hella Rodney. Thanks for clicking on my video.